You're banned from Thanksgiving, idiot. The text glowed on my phone screen, lighting up the dark kitchen counter. I stared at the words, tracing the letters with my eyes. There was no preceding argument, no missed phone call, just that single sharp sentence from my daughter-in-law, Sarah. I set my coffee mug down. The house was entirely quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I was 64, a widow of 5 years, and I had spent the last 3 of those years keeping my son David's household afloat. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the familiar sting of rejection that used to accompany Sarah's outbursts. Instead, a strange, profound calm washed over me. I picked up my phone and typed a single word, "Okay." I hit send and watched the message turn green. For years, Thanksgiving had been a grueling marathon. I would arrive at their house by 6 in the morning, arms loaded with groceries I had paid for. I would chop, roast, and bake while Sarah sat in the living room scrolling through her phone and complaining about the smell of onions. David would hide in the garage, avoiding the tension. I did it because I loved my son, and I wanted to be part of my grandchildren's lives. I thought my service was the rent I had to pay to be included. Not anymore. The screen of my phone darkened. I walked over to my laptop sitting on the dining table. I opened it, the bright screen casting a harsh light in the dim room. I navigated to my banking dashboard. The numbers on the screen represented hours of my life, my husband's life insurance, and my pension. Every month, a massive chunk of it automatically filtered out into accounts that didn't belong to me. Sarah thought she was punishing me by revoking my invitation. She didn't realize she was handing me the key to my own cage. I clicked on the first auto-pay setting. It was time to see how much Thanksgiving really cost. The financial slide had happened slowly, like a leak in a roof you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. It started right after my husband passed. David came to me, shoulders slumped, talking about inflation and a missed bonus at work. He asked for help with his property taxes. Just once, he promised. Then, it was the family cell phone plan. "It's cheaper if we're all on one account, Mom," he had reasoned. I put my card on file. Next came the car insurance, then the internet bill. Finally, I was given a secondary credit card tied to my account, which Sarah kept in her wallet just for household emergencies. Somehow, Sarah's weekly trips to the nail salon and premium streaming service subscriptions had become emergencies. David never looked at the statements. Whenever I brought up the rising costs, he would look at the floor. "Sarah just likes things a certain way, Mom. It's easier not to fight it." His comfort for my cash. That was the unspoken arrangement. I became the silent investor in a life I was barely allowed to participate in. Sarah made all the rules. I wasn't allowed to buy the kids gifts unless she approved them. I couldn't visit without a week's notice. And now I was an idiot, banned from a dinner I was entirely funding. I looked at the laptop screen. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I navigated to the joint cell phone account first. I found the payment settings, deleted my checking account information, and checked the box to remove auto-pay. The system asked if I was sure. I clicked yes. I moved to the internet provider, deleted the car insurance, canceled the upcoming draft. Then I logged into my primary credit card dashboard. I found the authorized user section. Sarah's name sat right below mine. I clicked the small red trash can icon next to it. Card revoked. I closed the laptop. The silence in my kitchen felt different now. It didn't feel lonely. It felt entirely mine. Tomorrow was Wednesday. The dominoes were set. Wednesday morning arrived with a crisp chill. I woke up at my usual time, but the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach was gone. Usually the day before Thanksgiving involved me running to 3 different grocery stores, hunting down the specific organic cranberries Sarah demanded, and paying for the massive turkey David insisted on frying. Today, I made a cup of tea and watched the neighborhood wake up through my living room window. At 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Sarah, including David and me. Don't forget the good wine this year, Nadine, and we need you to pick up extra butter. She was acting like the text from last night never happened. This was her signature move. She would lash out, assert her dominance, and then expect me to fold right back into my role as the compliant, useful mother-in-law. She assumed my okay meant I had accepted my punishment, but would still deliver the goods, perhaps dropping them on her porch, like a delivery driver. I read the message, set the phone down, and grabbed my coat. I drove to a small upscale market a few miles away. I didn't buy a 20-pound turkey. I bought a beautifully seasoned Cornish hen, a bundle of fresh asparagus, and a single decadent slice of chocolate cake. I also bought a bottle of wine, but it was for me, not for Sarah's dining table. While I was paying, another text came through. This one was from David. Mom Sarah says the Wi-Fi just went down. Did you get an email from the provider? I smiled at the cashier, handed over my own credit card, and took my small bag of groceries. I didn't reply to David. I walked out to my car, the cold air biting at my cheeks, feeling lighter than I had in years. I put the groceries in the trunk. The auto pays for their internet and phones were due on the 25th. Today. The grace periods were over. The system was simply doing its job. I drove home in glorious silence. By Wednesday afternoon, the cracks in their perfect facade began to show. I was in my kitchen, prepping my small hen with rosemary and garlic, when my phone screen lit up again. It was an automated alert from the credit card company. Attempted transaction declined $245.80 at Whole Foods. I chuckled softly. Sarah was doing her last-minute shopping. Without my card, the emergency fund was officially dry. 5 minutes later, David called. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started ringing again. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up. Mom, hey. David's voice was tight, rushed. Listen, Sarah is at the store and the emergency card is declining. Did you lock it or something? She's got a line behind her. I didn't lock it. David. I replied, my voice perfectly level. I canceled it. There was a heavy pause on the line. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in his background. You canceled it. Why, Mom? She needs to buy the groceries for tomorrow. I'm banned from Thanksgiving, remember? I said. That was just Sarah venting. You know how stressed she gets? I'm not arguing, David, I interrupted. Guests shouldn't have to pay for a dinner they aren't allowed to attend, and neither should idiots. Mom, come on. Just turn it back on. We can talk about this later. No, I said simply. I'm busy preparing my own dinner. Have a good afternoon. I hung up. I didn't block his number. I wanted to see exactly how much panic would unfold when they realized the credit card wasn't the only thing that had stopped working. The internet was already down. By midnight, the cell phone carrier would suspend their lines for non-payment. I poured myself a glass of the wine I'd bought, sat in my favorite armchair, and opened a book. For the first time, I wasn't sweeping the floor behind someone else's stage. I was sitting in the audience watching the curtain fall. Thanksgiving morning broke bright and cold. I slept until 8. No alarm, no frantic rushing to pack Tupperware, no stress sweat. I walked into my kitchen and turned on the coffee maker. The aroma filled the space, warm and inviting. I checked my phone. The screen was completely clear of messages. No demands for butter, no complaints about the schedule. I knew why it was quiet. Their cell service had been suspended at midnight. I imagined the scene at their house. Sarah waking up, reaching for her phone to scroll through social media, only to find the Wi-Fi dead, and the cellular data flashing a warning symbol. I pictured David realizing his phone was a useless brick. Around 10 o'clock, my house phone, a landline I kept entirely separate from their family plan, rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was Leah, my daughter, calling from Chicago. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom," she chimed. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. So Leah dragged out the word amusement, coloring her tone. "David just called me from a borrowed phone. He sounded like he was having a heart attack." I laughed. Did he now? "He said the internet is off, their phones don't work, and Sarah is having a meltdown because her card declined yesterday and she can't post pictures of her table setting." "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said honestly. "I just stopped doing everything." I briefly told Leah about the text. She sighed loudly. "It's about time, Mom. I've been telling you for 2 years that they treat you like an ATM. You deserve better than a porch pickup or a ban." "I know," I said. "I finally know." "Are they going to show up at your house?" she asked, a hint of worry creeping in. "Probably," I said, looking out the front window at my quiet street. "But my door is locked, and my bills are paid. Let them come." By noon, the house phone began to ring. First once, then twice. I let the answering machine pick it up. It was David calling from what sounded like a neighbor's phone. "Mom, please pick up. The phones are dead." I tried logging into the Verizon account, but the password is changed. "Mom, please." He hung up and called back immediately. I turned the volume down on the machine. I put my Cornish hen in the oven. The smell of roasting rosemary and butter quickly replaced the silence in the house. I set my small dining table with a nice linen cloth, my best silverware, and a single candle. I wasn't just eating. I was celebrating. I checked my cell phone. Because their lines were suspended, they had apparently managed to find a Wi-Fi hotspot, somewhere, maybe a coffee shop, to send a flood of iMessages. The notifications cascaded down my screen. "Call me." "Mom, this isn't funny. Sarah is crying. The guests are coming in 2 hours. We need the internet for the smart TV." I scrolled past them. 26 missed messages in total. Not a single one asked how I was doing. Not a single one apologized for the text Sarah had sent. Every message was about what they had lost, not who they had lost. At 1:30 p.m., I heard the crunch of tires on my gravel driveway. I didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. The heavy, aggressive slam of car doors confirmed it. I wiped my hands, walked to the front door, and made sure the deadbolt was firmly in place. Through the small, frosted glass window, I saw David's silhouette. Sarah was right behind him, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. A loud, frantic knock rattled the wood. "Mom." "Open the door," David yelled. I took a deep breath, smoothed my sweater, and unlocked the door, opening it just wide enough to stand in the frame. "What did you do?" David demanded before the door was even fully open. His face was flushed, his hair a mess. Sarah stood behind him, glaring at me like I had set their house on fire. "I'm making lunch," I said, my voice quiet. "What do you want, David?" "Don't play games," Nadine Sarah snapped, pushing past David's shoulder. "You cut off the phones. You turned off the Wi-Fi. My parents are arriving in an hour, and I can't even play background music." "Turn it back on." I looked at her. Really looked at her. For years, her sharp tone would make me shrink, desperate to keep the peace. Today, she just looked like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. "I didn't turn anything off, Sarah," I replied. "I just stopped paying for it. The accounts are in my name." I closed them. David rubbed his face in frustration. "Mom, why now? On Thanksgiving." "You're embarrassing us." "No, David," I corrected him. "Sarah banned me from Thanksgiving. She called me an idiot. I simply decided that if I'm not welcome at the table, my wallet isn't welcome either." "It was just a text," Sarah shouted. You're overreacting to punish us. I'm not punishing you, I said, leaning against the door frame. I'm separating my finances from yours. You are two adults in your 30s. You have jobs, pay your own bills. But we don't have the account numbers. We can't just fix this today, David pleaded. I turned away from the door, walked to the hallway console table, and picked up a manila folder I had prepared the night before. I walked back and handed it to David. What is this, he asked, looking at it like it might explode. The physical bills, I said. The final balances, the account numbers, and the transfer of liability forms. Sign them, set up your own payment methods, and your services will resume. David opened the folder. His eyes scanned the top sheet, a summary I had quickly typed up. I watched the color completely drain from his face as his brain processed the math. Mom. This is over $800 a month. I know, I said. That's what I've been covering. Sarah snatched the paper from his hands. Her eyes darted over the numbers, her jaw tightening. For a second, the arrogance faltered, replaced by genuine shock. She had never seen the total sum of her lifestyle choices printed out in black and white. You can't just dump this on us, Sarah hissed, though her voice lacked its usual bite. We didn't budget for this. Then you'll need to adjust your budget, I replied. Maybe cancel a few streaming services. Or skip the nail salon. David looked at me completely defeated. Mom, please. Just pay it this month to get the phones back on. I'll pay you back. I promise. No, I said. It was a complete sentence. I didn't justify it. I didn't offer a compromise. I just stood my ground. You're really going to ruin our Thanksgiving over a text message, Sarah asked, trying to summon her outrage again. You ruined your own Thanksgiving, I answered. I'm going to go eat my dinner now. Happy holidays. I stepped back inside and pushed the door shut. The heavy click of the deadbolt echoed in the small entryway. I stood there for a moment listening. Outside, David muttered something angry. Sarah snapped back at him. Footsteps retreated down the steps. Car doors slammed again, and they drove away. I walked back into my kitchen, pulled my perfectly roasted hen from the oven, and sat down at my table. The food tasted incredible. The days following Thanksgiving were entirely silent. With their phones out of commission and their pride wounded, David and Sarah didn't try to visit again. I went about my life. I went to the bookstore, took long walks, and watched whatever I wanted on my television without Sarah's profile popping up on the screen. I checked my bank account on Monday morning. Seeing my balance hold steady, untouched by sudden auto-pay drains, gave me a deep sense of security. On Tuesday, an email arrived from David. It was sent from his work address. Mom, we got the internet back on, but we need to pay a deposit for the phones because our credit isn't great. Can you loan us $300? Sarah says she's sorry about the text. It was the weakest apology I had ever seen. It wasn't about repair. It was about the deposit. I replied, no. Good luck with the phones. Later that evening, Leah called again. Okay, you are officially a legend, she said, laughing. David called me from work. He is stressing out. Apparently, they had to cancel their weekend trip because they have to use that money to pay the car insurance you dropped. Actions have consequences, I said, pouring a cup of tea. He asked me if I would talk to you, try to convince you to at least cover the insurance through the end of the year. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him to grow up, Leah said proudly. Mom, I'm so glad you finally cut them off. You sound different, lighter. I am lighter, I agreed. For years, I had carried the weight of their resentment, convinced I had to buy their affection. Putting down the checkbook made me realize that affection wasn't for sale anyway. I hadn't lost a family. I had just fired my dependents. A month passed. The first snow of December dusted the neighborhood. My house felt entirely like my own again. I had hired a painter to redo the guest room, transforming the space Sarah used to dump her excess shopping bags into a cozy reading room for myself. With the money I was no longer bleeding every month, I booked a flight to Chicago to spend Christmas with Leah and her husband. The week before my trip, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was David's. Inside was a generic holiday card. Mom, missing you this Christmas. Things have been tight, but we're figuring it out. Hope you're well. Love, David. There was no demand for money, no complaints from Sarah, and no invitation to their house. It was the first honest communication we'd had in years. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, and the relationship was still broken, but it was real. He was finally learning how to stand on his own 2 feet. I set the card on the mantle. I didn't feel the urge to call him and fix his tight budget. My boundary held firm. On Christmas morning, I woke up in Leah's guest room. The smell of cinnamon rolls wafted up the stairs. I walked down in my robe, completely relaxed. No tension, no walking on eggshells. Leah handed me a mug of coffee and hugged me. Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas. Honey, I smiled. I looked out the frost-covered window. I had spent my late husband's money trying to keep a broken dynamic intact, terrified of being left alone. But the truth was, giving away my resources had only made me invisible. Taking back control didn't require a fight or a lawyer. It just required the courage to say no and the willingness to let the silence follow. I took a sip of my coffee. The silence was beautiful.